My friend, Adeel, was always a quiet, thoughtful guy. The kind of person who never sought the spotlight but held a world of emotions beneath his calm exterior. Living in a modest home on the outskirts of the city, Adeel's life had always been complicated in ways others didn't see. His father had remarried when Adeel was still in his late teens, bringing a new woman into their already fragile family. That woman was Sara, his stepmother. Sara was nothing like the typical stepmother one might imagine. She wasn't stern or distant. Instead, she carried herself with a warmth that was often mistaken for softness, but had a strength hidden deep beneath her calm demeanor. She had entered their lives quietly, but left an undeniable mark on the household. Her presence shifted the dynamics in ways nobody had expected. For Adeel, it was difficult to adjust. His father seemed happier with Sara, which left Adeel feeling displaced. Their conversations became fewer and more superficial. Sara was always kind to him, but there was a distance neither of them dared to cross. It was a silent acknowledgement that certain lines couldn't be blurred. Yet, beneath the surface, something unspoken lingered. Adeel's world was already complicated by his own hidden truth. He had never fully come out to his family about his sexuality. He had lived cautiously, guarding his identity as if it were a fragile secret. In a home where every glance was scrutinized and every word weighed, expressing his true self felt impossible. Sara, on the other hand, seemed to understand pain and loneliness better than anyone else. She had her own shadows from the past, whispered stories of lost love and betrayal that she never shared openly. Sometimes, Adeel would catch her staring out the window late at night, a distant sadness flickering in her eyes. Those quiet moments felt like the only times they were connected, even if they never spoke about it. It was during one such restless night that everything began to change. The house was unusually silent. The hum of the ceiling fan and the occasional creak of the old wooden floorboards were the only sounds breaking the stillness. Adeel lay awake in his room, unable to shake the weight of his thoughts. His mind raced with memories of loneliness, rejection, and the impossible longing he carried inside. He needed something, a connection, a moment of relief from the walls closing in on him. And somehow, in the quiet desperation of that night, his thoughts turned to Sara. It wasn't the stepmother he saw then. It was a person vulnerable, complex, maybe even lonely like him. The boundary that had always seemed unbreakable began to blur in his mind. So he made a decision, one that would change everything. Quietly, he slipped out of his room and moved toward the living room where Sara often spent her nights reading or watching late-night shows. His heart pounded loudly in his chest as he hesitated at the door, unsure if he was about to cross a line from which there was no return. Sara looked up, surprised but not alarmed. Her eyes met his, and in that moment, the unspoken feelings between them hung thick in the air. "What is it, Adeel?" she asked softly. He swallowed hard, searching for the right words. I need to ask you something. Something I don't think I can say out loud." Sara's expression softened. "You can tell me anything." And with that invitation, Adeel found himself standing on the edge of a secret he had never dared to voice, asking for something that no one else knew he needed, something that could either heal or shatter the fragile balance of their lives. The night stretched on, heavy with unspoken desires and silent fears. Neither of them knew where this path would lead, but both felt the weight of the moment, a fragile thread connecting two souls caught between longing and loyalty. As Adeel's voice finally broke the silence, the world outside faded away, leaving only the quiet pulse of a secret waiting to be revealed. The silence between Adeel and Sara felt thick, almost tangible, as he struggled to find the words. His pulse was loud in his ears, every heartbeat echoing the risk he was about to take. For so long, he had buried his feelings, hidden his true self behind carefully constructed walls, but now, in the quiet glow of the living room lamp, everything felt vulnerable, exposed. Sara watched him patiently, her eyes gentle yet searching. There was no judgment there, only an openness that both comforted and terrified Adeel. It was as if she sensed the weight of his secret before he even spoke it. "I don't know how to say this," Adeel began, his voice barely above a whisper. There's been something I've felt for a long time, something I never told anyone. Not even my closest friends. Sara nodded slowly, encouraging him without pushing. You're safe here, Adeel. He took a deep breath, gathering the courage. I'm different. I've never been able to talk about it because I was afraid. Afraid of how my father would react, how society would judge me, even afraid of what I might feel myself. Sara's expression softened, and a flicker of understanding passed between them. You mean your sexuality? Adeel nodded, grateful for her perceptiveness.
Yes.
I'm gay, and I've kept it hidden because it felt like it didn't belong here. In this family, in this world. Sara reached out, her hand briefly brushing his arm, a touch filled with unspoken sympathy. You're not alone in feeling that way, she said quietly. I've lived with my own secrets. Sometimes the hardest battles are the ones we fight within ourselves. The conversation opened a door Adeel had kept closed for years. The loneliness that had clung to him began to loosen, replaced by a fragile hope. But even in that moment of connection, another feeling stirred beneath the surface, an unexpected attraction toward Sara herself, complicated and confusing. He knew it was wrong. Stepbrothers, stepmothers, that line was supposed to be clear. But the boundaries between them felt blurred, as if the loneliness they both carried created a hidden bridge between their worlds. I don't know why I'm telling you this, Adeel admitted, his eyes searching hers. Maybe it's because I feel like you understand things I can't explain. And there's something else, something I've been afraid to admit even to myself. Sara's gaze didn't waver. You can tell me anything. Adeel swallowed hard, the words trembling on his lips. I think I'm drawn to you.
More than I should be.
It's confusing and wrong, but I can't ignore it anymore. For a moment, the room seemed to hold its breath. Sara's face reflected a swirl of emotions, surprise, hesitation, but also a strange warmth that didn't disappear. Feelings are never simple, she said softly, especially when they come wrapped in unexpected places. Neither of them moved, caught in the fragile tension of forbidden attraction. The weight of their secret hovered between them like a delicate thread, threatening to snap, yet impossible to ignore. Sara finally broke the silence. What do you want from me, Adeel? Her question was gentle but direct. It was the moment of truth, the point where everything could change. I don't know exactly, he confessed. Maybe just someone to listen. Someone to hold on to when everything feels too heavy. But maybe more than that. I don't want to hurt anyone, and I don't want to cross lines, but I need something, some kind of connection. The days following that night felt like walking through a fog for Adeel. The secret they now shared between him and Sara weighed heavily on his mind, a fragile thread tethering them both in silence. Their interactions remained careful, layered with a subtle tension neither dared to name openly. At home, everything seemed unchanged to others, but to Adeel, the walls of his world had shifted irrevocably. He caught Sara's eyes from across the room, and in those brief moments, a complicated storm of emotions surged: desire, guilt, hope, and fear. It was a silent language, spoken without words, but felt deeply by both. His father, unaware of the undercurrents, continued about his routines, trusting that the family held its fragile peace. But Adeel knew that peace was brittle. He wrestled with guilt, not just for what he had allowed himself to feel, but for the potential betrayal that lingered in his heart. Late at night, alone in his room, he reflected on the tangled emotions. Was it infidelity? A betrayal of family? Or was it something more? A desperate search for belonging and love in a world that had repeatedly shut its doors on him? Sara, too, was caught in the whirlwind. Her quiet strength now carried an added burden. She cared deeply for Adeel, not as a stepson, but as someone who had reached into the shadows of her loneliness and offered connection. Yet she feared what the consequences might be, not just for themselves, but for the family they both belonged to. One afternoon, Sara found Adeel sitting by the window, lost in thought. She sat beside him quietly, hesitant but determined. "Have you thought about what this means?" she asked gently. Adeel looked at her, eyes heavy with uncertainty. Every moment. I don't want to hurt anyone. I don't want to lose what little family I have. But I also can't ignore how I feel. Sara nodded, her own heart aching with the same conflict. Love isn't always neat or easy, she said. Sometimes it's messy, and it challenges everything we thought we knew. But denying it doesn't make it disappear. Their honesty forged a fragile trust between them, but it did little to ease the burden of their secret. The walls around their feelings remained unbreachable to others, forcing them into silence and isolation. Adeel's nights grew restless as guilt gnawed at him. He wondered how long they could keep this hidden, how long before the delicate balance shattered. Yet, despite the risk, the connection they had formed felt too precious to abandon. In moments of solitude, he dreamed of a world where he could live openly, where his love, however complicated, would be accepted rather than hidden away. But reality was far harsher, tethering him to fear and secrecy. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Adeel found himself standing before his father's study door, hesitation gripping his heart. He wanted to confess, to seek understanding, but the words stuck like stones in his throat. Instead, he turned away, knowing that some truths must wait until the world was ready to hear them. Sara watched him from a distance, her own heart heavy with unspoken hopes and fears. She longed to protect Adeel from the judgment and pain she knew awaited, but also to be honest about the complicated feelings binding them together. Their secret was a fragile thread woven through the fabric of their lives, delicate, dangerous, and yet undeniably real. As the story unfolded quietly in the spaces between their words, both wondered what future awaited them. Would they find a way to reconcile love and loyalty, truth and pain? Or would the fragile balance break, leaving behind only silence and regret? For now, all they had was this moment, a suspended breath in time where love defied convention and courage was measured in small, secret acts of honesty. And sometimes, that was enough. Weeks passed in a fragile dance of silence and stolen glances. The secret that bound Adeel and Sara became heavier with each passing day, an unspoken weight pressing down on their every interaction. Their household, once a place of simple routines, now thrummed with quiet tension, an invisible fault line threatening to fracture everything. Adeel found himself pulled between two worlds. On one side was the yearning to embrace the connection he had found with Sara, a sanctuary from his isolation and confusion. On the other was the ever-present fear of discovery, of judgment, and of irreparable damage to the family he still desperately wanted to protect. Sara, too, wrestled with her emotions. She knew the line they had crossed was perilous, a betrayal of trust not only toward her husband, but also toward herself. Yet, she could not deny the solace Adeel brought, a light in the shadows of her own loneliness. One evening, as dusk settled softly over the neighborhood, Adeel sat alone in his room, a restless energy buzzing beneath his skin. The memories of their secret encounters mingled with the ache of guilt, twisting inside him like a storm. Suddenly, the quiet was broken by a knock at his door. It was Sara. "I need to talk," she said quietly, her voice steady but laced with urgency. Adeel's heart hammered. "Is everything all right?" "No," she admitted, stepping inside and closing the door behind her. "We can't keep pretending this isn't happening. It's changing us, changing everything." He nodded, the truth in her words settling heavily on his shoulders. "I don't want to lose you, but I don't want to hurt anyone either." Sara looked at him with a mix of sadness and resolve. "We need to decide what this means. For us and for the family." Their conversation was raw and honest, a rare moment where fear and hope collided. They spoke of boundaries, of desires, of consequences they could no longer avoid. In the days that followed, the undercurrents in the house shifted perceptibly. Adeel's father began to notice subtle changes, a glance exchanged between his wife and son, moments of unexplained tension. Suspicion crept quietly into the edges of his awareness. One afternoon, Adeel's father confronted Sara gently. "Is something going on between you and Adeel?" he asked, voice low but firm. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. She realized the fragile secret was unraveling, the walls closing in on all of them. With trembling honesty, she confessed, "We care for each other in a way that is complicated and painful. It's not what you think, but it's not simple either." The family was forced to confront the tangled web of emotions, secrets, and desires that had grown between them. The path ahead was uncertain, marked by heartbreak and difficult choices. For Adeel, Sara, and his father, the story was no longer just about forbidden attraction or hidden truths. It had become a test of forgiveness, understanding, and the fragile strength of love in all its complicated forms. As the days turned into weeks, they began to navigate this new reality, imperfect, challenging, but real. And in that imperfect truth, there was a quiet hope that even in the most unexpected places, love might find a way.